Hello everyone, this is Pal Ponderon Weather. In this update, we have a very intense storm developing with high winds and a critical fire danger today, as well as Hurricane K. Then we've got some colder air pushing southward, and yes, even some snow in its wake. Welcome back, everyone. How's it going out there? This is your morning update. I appreciate all my followers and my new followers. So if you are new to the channel and do like detailed weather breakdowns on North America and the tropics, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the overall 500 millibar on the North American view this morning. And it's out west. It's been this ridge of high pressure that's been sending these record temperatures. That's a 597 ridge of high pressure. But down here, we've got developing Hurricane K that's traversing up into the Baja of California. That is going to be continuing to take a beeline towards Southern California and actually bringing some heavier rains there, as well as we have developing Hurricane Earl, and then we have Danielle. So we actually have three hurricanes out there, but then all of our attention turns to the north as we have this big trough that's really developing up here in Canada, and that's actually going to be plunging southward, bringing some colder air down into this portions of the United States and the days ahead. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So let's move on to Friday, and here's the overall setup. That ridge of high pressure, complements of K, slowly loses its punch by Friday, and there's that low pressure center right off the southern coast of California, and that's going to bring some heavier rains for that region, as well as we have another developing area of low pressure down here into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's going to run out of time to turn tropical. But it doesn't matter because it's going to lift all that Gulf moisture and dump it into the southeast, bringing some heavier rains into portions of Florida. That's going to be impacting a good chunk of the southeast as we have that colder air continuing to take shape and plunging southward. It's going to be modifying further south as it goes. But yeah, a lot of people are going to be experiencing some of their first fall front of the year. So let's take a look at the overall setup going forward. These temperatures, man, yesterday, these were temperatures just about 3 o'clock. These aren't even the highs because it was 124 in Death Valley. It actually topped out 125. But look at all the over 100 degree temperatures. Not just that, over 110 degrees for a good chunk of California. I mean, it's just been record breaking, very dangerous heat out there. Fortunately, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We're gonna have to be dealing with this for a couple more days, but there is reprieve on the way, so hang in there. But before that, we've got big storms to talk about today. In fact, we just had an upgrade to a hatched risk for very high winds of these intense winds. They're going to come across portions of central and southeastern Oregon today through Idaho and then going into portions of Montana. And these are going to be really intense winds on the verge of 70, 75, even 80 miles an hour. We could even have some stronger thunderstorms down here into portions of Houston, getting into portions of San Antonio later on this afternoon. But yeah, I mentioned the winds. This is why we have that hatch risk in place over portions of Oregon, because it's topping out of right around 75, 80 miles an hour winds today. So definitely be on high alert for and batten down the hatches up here if you live in portions of Oregon, especially into Idaho, but then especially into Montana, as we've got Hurricane K going to be lurking, continuing to traverse up the coast here, and that's going to bring some pretty big impacts to portions of Southern California. But before all that, on combination of all the high winds, we've got critical to extreme fire danger. So it's a nasty setup taking shape in portions of Oregon and Idaho, as well as Montana, with those extreme fire dangers in Great Falls, Montana today, and then even down towards Boise and Spokane and Tacoma and Vancouver. All those areas are under that either extreme or to critical fire danger. So definitely a very concerning setup for today, later on this afternoon. So now let's talk about the cold front, right? So as things change into Friday, it's been all about the heat, but I do feel we finally get some reprieve, compliments of Hurricane K down here, bringing in that cooler conditions underneath all that cloud and the winds, and that's going to be eventually creeping into Southern California. While we've got just a kind of a quick shot of colder air, mainly this is going to be in the upper elevations, but it's going to bring a good taste of fall for parts of the country as that colder air will continue to plunge south. But we'll be watching this developing low pressure center off the coast of Louisiana. That'll sneak into portions of southern Florida, portions of Florida there. Going to be bringing some heavier rains, but in its wake of that colder air, you can see by Saturday morning, it's a quick turnaround, right? I mean, we're talking it's 103 degrees today in Billings, Montana. By Friday, the high temperature is 61. That's a 40-degree plunge in temperatures, and that's going to continue to fall into Saturday morning, bringing 40s for lows in its wake, and even some 30s in the higher elevations as this sneaks through portions of Montana into Wyoming, as well as get it into portions of the Rocky Mountains here, where they're going to be experiencing even some 20s in the far extreme upper portions of the elevations. And underneath all that, yeah, we could be even talking some snow that's going to be ringing out in some of the higher elevations. A couple of inches of snow in some of those higher elevation terrains, but where are you going to be able to drop up in the 20s? That's going to leave a little bit more significant snows, could be approaching 6 inches or even up to a foot in some very isolated spots. So definitely some colder air to speak of, but mainly it's going to be a higher elevation event, especially with the snowfall. But before that, man, this is the overall relative humidity, and this kind of gives you a true depiction on what's going to happen by the time we get into Friday, going into Saturday. So here's Hurricane K, right? So it's going to be coming up the coast of the Baja of California. That's going to be setting up right off the coast of pulling in all that tropical moisture, dumping it right into Southern California, as we have that other developing low pressure center off into the Gulf of Mexico on the right side loaded, right? So it's going to pull all that moisture on the right side, impacting Central Florida into the Florida Panhandle, and that's going to traverse across into Georgia, portions of the Carolinas, and swinging on the backside. So you've got dry air in the middle, and then you got the right side loaded as this will continuing to lift further north, and as we got that cold front dropping further south into the central US. So there's definitely a lot happening. We're in that transition month where we're going to be seeing some rapid changes as we're making that transition from summer to fall, and it gets even more intense as we go into October with these just big swings in temperatures. So let's take a look at the setup, because this is pretty concerning. These are areas that don't really get that much rainfall. So unfortunately, it's going to be coming too fast, too furious. So we do have an upgraded moderate risk for excessive rainfall into portions of San Diego. This will be on Friday from Hurricane K. So if you live in Yuma from San Diego, I think this area is going to be really impacted. It doesn't take much to cause some serious flash flooding in this area, because these areas don't really get that much rainfall on a yearly basis. But there's going to become pretty intense, but with the remnants of what will be Hurricane K at the time. So I think you even get some impacts into portions of Tucson as well as into Phoenix and going back into Los Angeles. And it's not just a one-day event, it goes into tomorrow. So, but we'll also have that other area of concern with that developing low pressure center off the coast of Louisiana. On the right side of that, they do have that upgraded slight risk for excessive rainfall. That's going to be impacting portions of Central Florida, going into Alabama, as well as Georgia, going all the way up into portions of the Carolinas, eventually headed into the Tennessee Valley and swinging back down through Mississippi. But like I mentioned, it's not just a Friday event. It actually extends into Saturday. So we have a 2-day event coming up into Southern California where they could be looking at some heavier rainfalls, where they do have that slight risk in place. And that slight risk will be lifting further north as that low pressure center continues to lift further north. That'll bring the heavier rains with it. So by the time we get into Saturday, the heavier rains will be in portions of Georgia and South Carolina, as well as into North Carolina. So as we go into Saturday, there's that colder air, right? So you can actually see it on with all these deep purples, right? So this is a pretty potent colder air mass. You're really going to mainly feel it in the upper higher elevations regions. But considering where we've been lately with 90s and 100s, this is going to be a quick shot of fall air coming through for at least the northern tiers, and of course it'll modify as it continues to plunge south, but that's a welcome relief with K coming in, with bringing all those cooler conditions into portions of Southern California. That'll reach into Nevada and creep into portions of Arizona, and this will continue to lift, eating away at that ridge of high pressure. So we got some help on the way. Just got to deal with a couple more days with some of that intense heat. But yes, as we go into Sunday, so things definitely start to get interesting. We've got K kind of moving offshore by then. That'll be finally going to be dissipating out into the open waters, but we'll have that low pressure center further north, and we've got a fairly good vorticity index showing up into portions of Wisconsin and to Iowa here, and we could be looking at some severe storms, because if we look at the 850 millibar, it's always on the north side of that low pressure, and we've got a pretty intense jet streak coming across at 50 knots. Right, so I'm looking at severe storms breaking out into portions of Iowa, getting into portions of Wisconsin. I think this fishtails back into Michigan as we get deep into the afternoon, into the early evening time frame, as that low pressure center will continue to lift further north, and then we have that colder air with that cold front continuing to dive southward, modifying in its wake. So by the time we get going into Monday, you can definitely see that colder air starting to modify. We're not seeing those purples anymore. Now we're showing in the greens. So we're talking, 5-6 degrees below average temperatures, right? So the temperatures will definitely modify the further south they go, but hey, it's definitely a quick shot of cooler air. And back behind it, the most noticeable thing is all the drier air that's going to be funneled in the backside. So it's gonna smell like fall, right? So you can just smell that crisp, cold air in its wake, with the much lower, even down into portions of Oklahoma and even portions of Texas here are going to be experiencing this just drier air mass. So you'll probably be in the 60s in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But hey, that's probably the coolest temperatures you've seen in the last 3 months, right? As the colder air will modify the further south it goes. So here's the overall setup of the next 7 days. So yes, we still have to deal with the intense heat really for today, tomorrow, going into Friday. But then by Friday, we've got that heavier rains moving into Southern California, and that lasts into Saturday. So we'll definitely be on high impacts down here into portions of Southern California. As to the southeast, we have that low pressure center traversing inland by then. By the time we get into Friday, headed into Saturday, with the heavier rains impacting Central Florida, the Florida Panhandle, portions of Alabama here, going into Georgia, as well as the South Carolina and North Carolina. And then as that low pressure center will traverse northward, I feel like these heavier rains will actually extend into portions of Iowa. So I'm definitely concerned, not just heavy rains, but even severe weather as we go into the 11th and 12th time frame, from Iowa to Wisconsin all the way to Michigan. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.